you very much, John. Wow, it's great to be at a Lincoln Day dinner so close to home. I live on the north end of Stein Road here in Custer, Washington. This is the closest I've ever been for a Lincoln Day dinner. And I'm looking at a lot of happy faces out there tonight. It's really great to be in such a room full of happy faces. But I have to correct something that you might have seen on the program. Featured speaker is not really the right title for what I'm doing here tonight. Actually, I'm just the warm-up act. Because you're about to hear from 3 young people that have come to speak to you tonight, and they are really talented. I had the pleasure of being able to hear a preview of their speeches, and they're going to come and dazzle you this evening. So just consider me the warm-up act. I'll try to do the best I can to give you a little background on what's happening nationally and what the RNC is doing, and some other things, but really, you're here to listen to those 3 people. But another reason you're here, and it's fantastic to see so many young people, so many young faces, so many new faces in the room. The real reason you're here is to support your local Republican Party. Now, I want everybody to look around the table. There's a lot of new faces, the table you're at right now. I want you to look close at some of these people, because there are future candidates sitting at your table. They don't know it yet, but they're going to run for the school board. They're going to run for city council. They're going to run for county council. They may even run for state legislature or higher. They're in this room right now. Now it's up to the rest of us to see that that happens. And the only way that that's ever going to happen, first for them to run and then to win, is to support this, your local Whatcom County Party. And the way you're going to do it tonight is bid. And I don't mean bid for value. I mean, when you see something that's up for auction and you think it's worth so much money to you, double or triple that amount of money. Because A, you're going to get to take the item home, and B is you're going to get somebody at your table to run for office and get elected. And that's really what we're all here for today. Not to listen to me, yes, to listen to the young folks, but mainly to support your party. So bid often and bid high on almost everything that they're... Here we go. Now, you folks may not know that 14 months ago, you put on one of the last in-person Lincoln Day dinners of the year. 14 months ago. Now you're having one of the first Lincoln Day dinners, in-person dinners. And in between, the government shut down all of our political activities. They closed all of our schools, they shuttered most of our businesses, and they even took control of who, when, and how many of us could go to church. Now notice, I didn't say COVID-19 did that. I said the government did that. Yeah. Because COVID, a virus, cannot take away your constitutional rights. Yeah. Yeah. Only government can take away those rights. And a one-party government, like we have in Olympia right now, and in Washington, D.C. right now, will do exactly that. They're going to keep doing it until we take away that one-party rule. They're going to violate your constitutional rights, and it's our job to do what we can to bring it to an end. Now, almost 3 months ago, Joe Biden took the oath of office. Sorry to have to say that name. Took the oath of office. And in so doing, he solemnly swore to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. Just 3 days ago, that same man on live television, using prepared remarks, he couldn't offer anything off the cuff. They're always prepared. Written in advance, he said that no constitutional amendment is absolute. What? Can you believe it? Can you believe any president saying that? But not what he just promised to preserve and defend the Constitution. Then 3 months later, he's saying that no amendment is absolute. Now that may shock all of you. It shouldn't surprise any of you. Because remember, Joe Biden he claims to be a devout, practicing Catholic. But then he supports abortion rights. So any man that can't say the Ten Commandments are absolute certainly isn't going to take the constitutional amendments as absolute either. So nobody should be surprised about that. It's been an extremely rough year for our individual rights and our liberties. And I'm sorry to tell you, it's probably going to be another pretty rough year ahead of us. Now, COVID is responsible for some of that. But in the shadow of the pandemic, the Democrat one-party rule is actually using COVID as an excuse to take away your individual liberties one by one. Jay Inslee and Joe Biden have used the emergency powers, something our forefathers never envisioned, never accounted for. The emergency powers to snatch away our liberties with the simple stroke of their pens. Unfortunately, there's not much we can do about that at this point in time, because we lost way too many elections last November. And yes, we also got cheated out of some. Yeah. And that's why we find ourselves in this precarious and this horrible situation of one-party rule. So what can we do? Well, to help find out an answer for some of those challenges, I went back to the words of our founding fathers. I searched through some old quotes, and I tried to find some shred of wisdom that I can bring to you tonight to help guide us in what we do now in this horrible situation. Let's see, I've got some here. Let's see, the first one I have is quite salient for this evening, and that is, remember we just came through a pandemic. It's from Ben Franklin. Quote, "Those who would give up liberty for safety deserve neither." Does that kind of ring? Those who would give up liberty for safety deserve neither. Could there be an old quote that is more relevant to today and in this pandemic than that particular quote? How many times have we been told that we must give up liberty for safety? Dr. Fauci tells us to be safe, we have to wear 3 masks. Or, well, first it was no mask, then it was 2 masks, then it was 3. Anyways, he tells us we have to give up our liberty for safety. He also tells us to follow the science. Now, it seems to me Benjamin Franklin discovered electricity. That makes him a scientist. So given the choice between following Dr. Fauci and Ben Franklin, which one of them are you going to follow? Ben Franklin sounds like a safe bet to me. The next quote's also from Ben Franklin, 1787, right at the end of the Constitutional Convention. Now you may know that the delegates to that convention were locked up in the convention hall for day after day after day after as they were trying to work out what form of government that we were going to have. And at the end of that, they left the hall, and there was a crowd outside anxiously awaiting to hear, what are we going to be? And Ben Franklin came out of the hall, and someone yelled from the audience, "Mr. Franklin, what kind of government do we have?" And Franklin's response was, "A republic, if you can keep it." Now, if you read those simple words, you would get the impression that Franklin was skeptical of this situation. That it was possible or even doubtful that we might be able to keep this republic. But I don't think that's what he meant. I think Franklin, in his wisdom, took that moment and used it as a teachable moment. And that taught those people in front of that hall, it taught the people across the country. It even teaches us to this day about what it means to have a republic. It was a warning. Republics are fragile. It was also counseling that republics take vigilance and protection over and over and over, and not just by the people who were in front of the hall that day, but the people across the country and the people across the generations leading right up to today. Franklin was trying to tell us, the people in the hall, the delegates, he didn't say, if we can keep it. He said, if you can keep it. He wasn't telling them that the people in the hall or even the politicians on Great High were going to keep this republic. He was saying, you are going to have to keep this republic. And when you look at the situation we're in today, that sounds like a pretty tough task. But I think we're up to it. I look at this group, and I know we're up to it. I did say earlier I was going to tell you what's happening at the RNC and what we're doing. I think I'm going to use one state in particular to explain what happened last November, what happened since November, and what's going to happen moving forward. I'm going to use the example of Georgia because it's been in the news so much and it played such a pivotal role in what happened last November. There is no mystery about what happened in the election last November. We got thrown out of the count room and they cheated behind closed doors. It's that simple. And don't believe any of this. It's a church, I can't say what I wanted to say. Don't believe anything else. Now, was it enough to change the election? I don't know. There's no way to know. Because we got thrown out of the count room and they did it behind closed doors. So I'm not willing to accept the fact that there was no proof that we got cheated out of the election. The problem is they cheated, so we can't know that we got cheated out of the election. But that's what happened last November. The RNC got busy very quickly because we had to after November. Because there was a special runoff for 2 Senate seats at the beginning of January in Georgia. So we pulled all the resources, all the stops out. We brought 600 paid staff members from across the country, put them in Georgia. We brought 3 or 4 times that many volunteers from across the country, put them in Georgia. I went down to do doorbelling and make phone calls in Georgia. And the reason we did that is we were going to make darn sure the stuff that happened on November 4th didn't happen again on January 4th. And we did. It went fairly well. I mean, the truth of the matter is that election was counted properly. But the funny thing is, and it's not very funny actually, I'm sorry, I chose the wrong word, we still lost. Now, why did we lose? If it was a fair election, we pulled out all the stops, we did our get out the vote, even Jeff went down and did get out the vote from all the way across the country, and we still lost the election. Well, the reason is that 400,000 Republicans that voted in November didn't turn out to vote again in January. 400,000 Republican voters didn't turn out again. One of those Senate seats was lost by about 50,000 votes. If we had just all turned out. And we tried. The RNC poured more resources and more money and more manpower to get out the vote in that Georgia election than we'd ever done before. We tried. Now I know why those 400,000 people didn't show up. Because they told me over and over and over again. As I was knocking on doors and making phone calls, about every 4th one said, what's the point? If I vote and they cheat, what's the point? Well, sadly, that's a self-fulfilling attitude. And even though we did everything we could, and we did make that a fair election, we lost because people were discouraged and they didn't believe that they weren't going to get cheated. So the RNC learned 2 major lessons from that experience. One is people are not going to go out to vote if they think they're going to get cheated anyway. And 2, if people don't turn out to vote, you don't win the election. So we're going to have to solve that problem, and it's a national problem, and that makes it an RNC problem. So I want to tell you that RNC has instituted 3 major projects to deal with that, and this happened very quickly. It's not that long ago since January we put this all into place. First thing is we started a voter integrity committee that's made up of some of the people from each of the states, and not just RNC members, but is also going to involve election experts and so forth. The purpose and the charge for this committee is specifically to gather together all of the evidence to finally look into what the authorities are not going to do, but they should. To finally look into the things that the media is not going to do, but they should. And that is to come up with a comprehensive report of what happened in November, and then come up with a plan to make sure it never happens again. And after that, we're going to fundraise, we're going to raise the troops, we're going to develop our own team from coast to coast of people to go watch every single future election and be on guard against the exact same tactics that they used in November. The Election Integrity Committee is going to develop a plan to make sure this does not happen again. The second thing that they're doing is they're involved and engaged with all of the states that have Republican legislatures. And the reason they're involved in that is we're trying to put through and put forward and pass into law exactly what you were told earlier from Doug Erickson and exactly what happened in Georgia. We want to put through laws that make it easier to vote and harder to cheat. And that's such a great phrase, and the RNC was involved in that. Easier to vote and harder to cheat. How can you argue with that? Now, we could do that in the states where we have Republican legislatures. But there are states that have Democratic legislatures. And they're not going to pass our laws. So the RNC is involved in the legal challenges of their state laws on voting systems. Currently, right now, there are 40 active lawsuits going on in blue states that the RNC are involved in. So that's the three things that we've been doing in just the 3 months since January. And it is our mission, it is our promise that we are going to not just fix the systems, but also regain the confidence of our voters so that they don't stay away from the polls anymore. Now, that's what we're doing. What can you do? Well, I think Doug announced some pretty good ideas about that earlier today, too. Run for office. Actually, before you even think about doing that, talk to your neighbor, your family members, the people at work, if you're allowed to do so. Make sure that they're not discouraged, that there's something happening. There is a way back from these problems. Talk amongst your neighbors and get them to understand their vote does matter. We are fixing the system. We will win back. It won't be one-party rule. We will win these situations back. One reason I'm so confident of that is not just how good we're going to be and how good you're going to be, but also how stupid they're going to be. Yeah. I mean, honestly, they make it awfully easy to run against them. And there's going to be no end of stupidities for us to be able to use in the campaign ads heading forward. It's just really sad that we're going to have to suffer the damage of those stupidities for a couple of years. But, silver lining, take advantage of it. Don't get discouraged. You know what to do, otherwise you wouldn't be here. But there's a lot of people who aren't here, and I need you to talk to each and every one of them and encourage them to participate and support the city council member, the school board member, or the state legislative candidate that's sitting with you right now. So, again, I'm only the warm-up act. You're here to listen to the other three young ones because it's going to take all hands on deck. It can't just be the generation that's been around here forever that we relied on, such as Carolyn, one of the most wonderful workers and party members that I've ever known. We can't rely on their efforts alone. We can't rely on the efforts of the people who are the mainstays of the party right now. We have to also reach out to the young people and bring them into the party, and all hands on deck. And that's why it's so great to see young people in the room tonight, and it's so great to listen to the three young people that are about to speak in a few moments. Now, I'll leave you with one last quote from Abraham Lincoln. Quote, "The fight must go on. The cause of civil liberty must not be surrendered at the end of one or even 100 defeats." Now, I think anybody who knows Lincoln's history knows that he lost a lot of elections before he won. And I think you all know he faced much bigger challenges than we do right now. But he overcame his, and we will overcome ours as well. Provided we pull together, we do what we can, and we bid extra high tonight. Yeah. Thank you very much. It's a good pleasure to be here.